Hey, welcome to It's Flightdeck, podcast dedicated to Montreal. It's football presented by our good friends over at SportBuff. Where if you use the promo code ALS Flightdeck10 at checkout, you will save 10% off the entire order. So head over to sportbuffshop.com, save 10% by using that code and support local. I'm Tim Capper. You can reach me on X at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on X. Make sure you shoot me a follow too if you like, over at Cliffy D.
I don't need your pity follows.
Nobody needs pity follows. Not even Greg on Sports needs pity follows, and he'll be the first to tell you that too.
Yes,
but you should follow him because he's a great guy.
Yes. So even though we're a couple days removed from our longest Flight Deck Live post game show, I still say that a block is a block is a block.
And you know what's funny? Watching NFL action this weekend, we saw there was quite a few block kicks, but you know what? Nobody blocked. There was no penalties. Why? Because the plant leg wasn't touched. And again, if you're going strictly by letter of the law, which it's still an unfortunate thing that happened to Sean Thomas Erlington, and he definitely deserves better, but it is what it is.
And that's all I will say, because I mean, I don't think I've beaten it to death, but I mean, it's just frustrating. I mean, yes, the Alouettes, do tie the Calgary Stampeders 1919, their first tie in 20 years.
20 plus years.
Sorry, 20. It was 1998. Sorry, it's 1998.
Yeah. Which, as you had mentioned during Flight Deck Live, you and I are both at that game because it was the first time the Alouettes did a fan train.
Mm-hmm.
We were both at that game and we didn't know from each other.
Yep.
That's too funny.
You know what I should check? What's funny is I actually, which I'm sure I do because I'm that type of person, I should check see if I had that ticket stub for that game. If I can't remember if they gave him out, and see where we sat. And wouldn't it be funny? ...
It really would. I mean, yeah, obviously the Alouettes fans were all clustered together, but yeah, that would be too hilarious if we were like a couple rows for each other, or even, God forbid, sitting next to each other. I mean,
that would have been funny. That actually would have been funny. Yeah. Obviously, since the Owls have tied, and we're going to go over the game a little bit more. Not that much more, but a little bit more.
I was going to say I think we pretty much beat it to death last during Flight Deck Live, but
we did. But there are some interesting things to talk about, team related actually, and CFL related, because there was some interesting news that dropped today, which could have some huge impacts a couple years down the line. But we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. As I said, there are still things that we're hoping that the Alouettes can correct. Considering that how poor Calgary was when it came to stopping the run, especially over the last couple of games. The defense has just been, the run defense has been atrocious. The Alouettes really are kind of in a lull when it comes to scoring offensive touchdowns. I think we have either one or two in the last 3 games. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I have to go back and check, but it's not what it was.
They're not lighting it up. That's for sure.
No, it's just a matter of what the Alouettes can do in order to get back on track, because obviously, as we'll talk about in the next couple of minutes, is this game versus Ottawa has huge implications. Huge. And for the first time in a long time, Owls, Red Blacks means something in the standings. It really does. And obviously, getting that one extra point this week did help put the Alouettes 2 full games up on the Red Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
With 2 to go, obviously, between the two. Since we did the post-game show, Cliff, has anything else that you thought of come to mind? Anything else that you didn't express on the show on Saturday? Because it's, we've had more time to think about it, and it's just a matter of now of doing, rather than just they need to do it this week rather than just state they're going to do it, because again, it's like kissing your sister, and that's probably going to be the name of the podcast. But was there anything else that you mused about a couple days following since we last talked?
Well, I don't think the saltiness truly subsided as far as the effort we saw. And it's interesting because watching Coach Moss's post-game speech with the players that the Alouettes put on social,
props to them, still continued props to them for doing that.
Absolutely. Even though whoever's doing the editing has to be, that guy or gal should be getting combat pay for taking out all of Jason Moss's F-bombs, which is hilarious because you'd think, okay, with that many F-bombs, you'd think he'd be upset or angry or anything like that. But it wasn't that. It almost seemed like, okay, he got it. He understood, okay, you fought hard, you gave a great effort, you just didn't win. You didn't lose, but you didn't win. That's what I took away from it. And it's kind of funny because part of me at first was like, how are you not pissed off about this? Like, I mean, you basically played down to your opponent's level. And quite frankly, we're lucky to get away with a tie. I mean, truth be told, neither team deserved to win, but Montreal, is head and shoulders above the Calgary Stampeders as far as, overall team goes. And you had to fight and scratch and claw your way to get a tie, to tie the game to go into overtime. And then ultimately, it really felt like especially during that second series, that second mini game, I feel like the Alouettes were trying not to lose. Like, just don't make a mistake and just go kick the field goal. I mean, if you happen to score a touchdown, awesome. But let's just go into it as conservative as possible. Do the best you can, and Jose Matos will just kick the field goal. We'll take the tie and go home. Like, it almost felt like they were settling for the tie, and that should irk anybody who supports this team. And the fact that it didn't seem to, or at least, if it bothered Jason Moss, it didn't seem that way based on his post-game speech. I mean, yes, he's dropping F-bombs left, right, and center, but I think this guy uses 10 F-bombs to describe how beautiful a cat looks. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's just his personality. That's just what he does. And that's what we love about him.
That's hilarious.
So I'm a little surprised that he didn't seem more terse and upset with the effort. If anything, he was praising these guys. So now that I've had a chance to think about it, I wonder, is it, were we being too hard on? Are we expecting too much out of this team as supporters? Are we, not willing to accept mediocrity? And I don't think Jason Moss is either. I think he does have a very high standard that he expects out of his team, as he should, considering that they are the reigning, defending, undisputed Grey Cup champions. But at the same time, you got to do better than that. And I guess I guess the feeling was, okay, you didn't lose. You're still unbeaten on the road. Let's just focus our efforts now towards Ottawa, because that game just became extremely important, as will the other game on Thanksgiving. But I guess I was a little surprised that Jason Moss wasn't losing his cool. And maybe, again, we know he's not that guy anymore. We know he's not the guy that's going to be throwing Gatorade jugs and headsets and everything like that. Still dropping F-bombs, but he's not going to be that guy that's just going to lose his cool for no good reason. So I guess that's kind of what surprised me more than anything else. And I guess now that I guess the team has sort of accepted that it happened. We're moving on. We're on to Ottawa now, and I guess that's where the focus is now, is to go into TD Place and reestablish yourself as the team that you say you are. They say that your record is what you are, what your record says you are. It's time for this Alouettes team to be a 10-2-1 football team.
No, I agree. And what I've noticed about the inside looks in the locker room, win or lose, is that I think you really get a good sense of what Coach Moss is like as our head coach. And you're right. In some of the times, it seems that you go back and you watch some of the videos where we've won, and then you go back and watch some of the videos where we've lost. He's kind of he's not really the same type of guy for both situations. I think he gives more emphasis when they do win. The guys who really stood out. in which he did this week too. Even though the team tied, they praised Jose Matos
As they should.
Exactly as they should have. It makes me wonder if just the media is being harsh, because I did see a few things in French and English media this week where it wasn't, it wasn't Saskatchewan Roughriders. Saskatchewan Roughriders haven't won a game, since 2021 past Labor Day. That wasn't that type of thing where they going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of, is it time to panic, or where are the Alouettes gone, or that type of thing? I mean, obviously I do understand it's a game-to-game thing, and no team is going to win every single game every year. You do have your ups and downs. Just look what happened last year. So
it's very true.
But again, it's so far we haven't heard the infamous. We had a good week of practice. Thank God.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I know. But again, as you said, it's done. Tape's been watched. Hopefully they stuff the BC and the Calgary tape, in the back of the filing cabinets, and forget about it. And yes, it is on to Ottawa. But before we do that, as I mentioned to you before on Flightdeck Live, 2 drives for the Alouettes really were the one at that got us our first touchdown, and then that one at the end of the game. The Owls go 8 plays. 8 plays, 57 yards to get that field goal. And they started the drive with 1:24 on the clock.
Yeah, they went right into tempo.
Yeah. And
which that would make 2 consecutive weeks that Cody Fajardo was able to put together essentially a 2-minute drive and pull it off to near perfection. I mean, against BC, he was able to get the touchdown to end the first half, and then to be able to march Alouettes all the way down the field in, as you said, I think it was minute 24, you said?
1:20, yeah, 1:24.
Yeah, to be able to march down. Again, all he had to do was get just get the field goal, which obviously Jose Matos did. But once again, we see that it's one of those things, when they say pressure creates diamonds, I think there's a little bit of that as well. And Cody Fajardo is the kind of quarterback that he doesn't wilt under these challenging circumstances. Like, he is going to put the team on his back and march him downfield if that's what he's got to do to either get the win, or at least in this case, at least get to overtime. And then in overtime, anything can happen. But yeah, it was 2 weeks in a row, essentially, that Cody Fajardo was able to put together that 2-minute drill and make something happen. I mean, whether it's out of a sense of urgency or just, lying in wait, almost, I guess, one way to describe it. But somehow he shifts into that mode. And you almost wish it was like that more. Maybe, as I joked about, maybe like when it comes to Bo Levi Mitchell, all of a sudden he's back to being the Bo Levi Mitchell of old. And maybe I had suggested that you call a hypnotist and convince him that every game day is Labor Day, because he seems to be at his best on Labor Day. Maybe that's the thing. You got to convince Cody Fajardo that every drive is less than 2 minutes to go. Maybe then he'll just start lighting it up again. I don't know, but yeah. And I did find both parallels very interesting, like the game against BC and this last game against Calgary, as far as his ability to kind of snap into it and be there for his team and be the leader they need him to be. Yeah.
And to me, again, and it wasn't the touchdown play. That was the other one. The other play that I was thinking of, it was the Mustafa Johnson rumble for almost something. I mean, there were a couple of plays, and there really wasn't much in that first half. to be honest with you, that, and obviously the kick, no kick, block, no block, whatever. But it's just a matter of they seem to be able to get a couple of things going. Finally, the Alouettes are no longer last in the league in rushing yards. With their over 100 yards last week, at least they were able to jump Saskatchewan into 8th place. It's still a long ways to go, but it's just I guess it's the little things. It's the little things. And, the big thing also too this week, Cliff, was, the Owls held the ball for 15 minutes less than they got to shore that up. Longer drives.
Yeah.
Calgary had 2 over 10, which ate up the clock.
Yeah, the Alouettes defense staying on the field way too long for anyone's liking. Again, we keep talking about how amazing this defense is, and by and large they are. But when, I'm sure at some point they must have been sucking wind, especially in the fourth quarter, as far as being out there as long as they were. I mean, I still don't think Jake Mayer is all that good of a quarterback, but somehow he looked good enough. I mean, he was able to extend drives. He was able to just, even if it's just stink and dunk your way down the field. I mean, he was doing what he had to do to get Calgary into scoring position. And, almost towards the end, that's when the defense finally clicked in and was able to limit what Calgary was able to do and just force them to settle for field goals. Or in the case of Reddy Paredes, one rouge both of his field goal attempts were misses. Well, one was a doink and one was brought out of the end zone by James Letcher.
Yeah.
But no touchdowns were scored at least. So, I mean, in that sense, the Alouettes defense is doing its job. But at the same time, they're spending way, way too much time on the field. I mean, especially after a long, long drive, only for the Alouettes to go on offense and then go 2 and out. These guys barely had a chance to catch their breath, and they're right back out there and trying to stop this Calgary team when motivated, who can score.
Yep. And the Owls they did not have a single quarter, Cliff, where they held the ball for over 6 minutes. Not a single quarter.
And especially when you're on the road too, you want to have these long, long drives just to eat up as much clock as possible. Just to keep your defense on the sidelines, make their defense work, make their defense earn everything. I mean, it's frustrating when you look at those numbers and see that it was basically 2-1 as far as time on the field, time of possession for the Stampeders versus the Alouettes. It's crazy to think about, and then all that just for both teams to end up tied to go into overtime and play those 2 mini games and still walk away tied when it was all said and done. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, no, I know. For the Alouettes, Cody Fajardo, it was 19-26 for 204 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions.
He ran in a touchdown.
Yeah, yeah. I was getting to that here. Okay. Get out of my head. Rushing, leading rusher was Walter Fletcher. 90 yards on 7 attempts. And by the way, longest was 55. And on that particular play, they were showing it a lot after on social media. Talk about the enhanced stats that TSN is now doing. The clock Fletch was just under 30 miles an hour on that run.
That's incredible.
Yeah. There are pluses to TSN Plus sometimes, and I'm glad they actually were able to bring that up. It's not my type of thing, but I still think that's cool. Cody at 20 yards, Dominic Davis 2, Tyler Snead had 3. For the receiving core, leading receiver was KJG, 11 targets, 8 receptions for 71 yards. Then it was Charleston Rambo 51. Tyler Snead with 38. Reggie White Jr. and Fletch had 15 yards, and Cole Speaker had 1 catch for 14.
Isn't that crazy that Cole only had 1 catch?
And that was in the fourth. No, that was in overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the need to get Keon Julian Grant and Tyler Snead back into the swing of things, but it's just crazy to think that Cole Speaker, who's been clutch, he's been in those situations where you desperately need something to happen. That's usually where Cody Fajardo will find Cole Speaker, even if it's just to move the chains. And he was a ghost. I just don't understand. Were they giving him all kinds of extra covers that we just couldn't see initially? I mean, I definitely get the importance of getting Keon Julian Grant and Tyler Snead, who just came off the 6-game list, back into the swing of things, get them back into the offense, and try to make them the stars that we know they can be. But I mean, you got Cole Speaker sitting right there. You don't look at him until overtime. I mean, that doesn't compute at all. And it kind of flies in the face of our whole podcast karma, because we always say, like, whenever a guest comes on the Alouettes flight deck, usually they ball out the next game. And I'm sure Cole was ready to do that, and he couldn't get a look. I don't get it. I'd love to know what happened, like why they just turned away from him until essentially overtime.
Yeah, I know. Well, again, it goes to the rushing thing too. Again, no other things that they need to improve. The running game, yes, it was better, but they still need to keep it going. Props obviously to Jose Maltos, 4 for 4 on the night. Clutch kicks, longest of 53 yards, which is ties the second best in Alouettes history for longest field goal.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did he not kick into the wind? That was in the third.
Yeah.
So be that as it may, he still being able to do, like, I seem to recall in the third quarter, the Alouettes were, they had the wind facing them. Mm-hmm. And Maltos was, and I was worried when they were lining up at 53 yards for Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, he's a hell of a kicker, but that's a pretty big ask, but he nailed it.
Listen to this though. In his post-game interview with Joey Alfieri, Joey asked him, what is his longest in practice? 70.
That's practice.
I think it's what he said. I think he said it was 70. So
I'd like to know what the wind conditions were for that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to say none, or unless there's a major gust behind him.
Him exactly. Out. Yeah, like they do with the in the Olympics, wind aided. Yeah.
Hey, still counts.
Yeah. Lastly, defense. Even though it's better, but I think still could be a hell of a lot better than what they were. Darnell Sankey did have double-digit tackles again for the game. And then it goes to our guys. Christopher Johnson, 31-yard gallop on that fumble return. Can't complain with that. And then we didn't have many. We had only one sack, but that sack did go to Wesley Sutton.
Although he was, like, once again, a heat-seeking missile. I mean, he was out for blood when it came to Jake Mayer. They had a couple of prime opportunities to just level him, but he got that one sack in. One sack in, and
Cosby. Yeah. And then there's the one that didn't count.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Any last words before we move on, buddy?
Have to give props to Arthur Hamlin. I mean, he was making his first start in relief of Marc-Antoine Dequoy. Did not look terrible, although I did feel like Calgary was going to try and take advantage of him, and that's not a surprise at all. I mean, I figured they were going to. It was kind of a trial by fire for the young draft pick out of I want to say Colgate, but I'm drawing a blank here. Anyways, first game that in relief of Marc-Antoine Dequoy, I think overall did a solid job, but I mean this secondary, I'm still waiting for them to be the menacing ball hawks that they used to be, especially last year, and we're just not seeing that now. Mind you, with Wesley Sutton barreling in and trying to go after the quarterback, I mean,
yes, Colgate, you are right.
Okay, see, I know my stuff, even when I don't think I do. But yeah, I'm still waiting for the secondary to get back to those ball hawking ways. And I feel like they're giving the receivers a lot of time and space to do their thing. And I understand PI is definitely something that you want to avoid as much as possible. And these refs can be very flag heavy, very quick to throw the laundry. So I don't know if that's playing a factor in it as well, but I just don't feel like we're getting as many interceptions, or at least we haven't been getting as many interceptions as in previous weeks. And I don't know if it's just a matter of the secondary just not going 100%, or if they're just a little gun shy because of, as I said, the referees. Like, if you just look at a receiver the wrong way, sometimes they'll just throw the laundry at you. I can't speak to that 100%, but I mean, it is something. When it comes to this defense, I do think overall they do a fantastic job. I do think that they could be doing a lot better in a lot of instances. It just feels like the last couple of games, they haven't looked themselves. And I sincerely hope that whatever it is, whatever sort of mental block they're going through, that they can get over it. I mean, I've got complete faith that Coach Thorpe is able to get these guys on track and get them doing what they do best. But like the past couple of weeks, and I'm hoping it's just that mid-season lull or whatever. Who's to say what it is? But I sincerely hope that this coming Saturday in Ottawa, this defense gets back on track and gets back to playing football like we know them to do.
It's very possible with certain news that came across the wire today. But before we talk about that, don't forget we are on social media. Did you happen to miss this past week's Flight Deck Live? Did you happen to miss this past week's show? Well, you can do so by checking out multiple places. You can check out the main archive over at www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. You can also check us out over on X at Alouettes FL Deck, over on Facebook over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod, and then on Instagram and YouTube at Alouettes Flight Deck. Don't forget, also we're on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Alouettes Flight Deck. And speaking of YouTube, don't forget that our companion show, our post-game show, Flight Deck Live, all the shows will be available there along with other places. All you got to do is make sure you check us out on social media to see when we're going to be going live, like we're going to be this week when we were in Ottawa, but we'll talk about that later. Yes. Also, again, if you're looking to rep some merch for the upcoming second annual fan meetup, you can do so by heading over to www.flightdeckgear.ca. And if you happen to miss, by the way, the little tease that I gave on the post-game show this week, first and foremost, why weren't you watching? Because you would have found it already. And great reaction, Cliff. And B, I'll repeat it, which is we're going to have some giveaways. There's not much to do, but we are going to have some giveaways at the Flight Deck meetup on Thanksgiving Monday. But that's for a couple of weeks. So obviously, let us know what you guys think, and make sure you do watch the show, especially on YouTube and stuff like that. Like, subscribe. Hit the bell, make sure that you know when we are going live, and stay tuned for all of our socials.
Yeah, no excuse. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're a part of this with us, folks, because as Tim said, we'll be giving away some free stuff. Who doesn't like free stuff, right?
I do. I love free stuff, and I'm giving it away.
There you go. As they say,
sorry, we're giving it away. So, yes. Yeah. Speaking of that news today, something that I don't think we saw this coming. There have been rumors floating around that this may occur, but the Alouettes announced today, Cliff, that defensive lineman Luala Ugalak is back with the team. And do I say thank goodness that he's back? Because I listened to his post-practice scrum today. Very appreciative, obviously, for being asked to come back. Very appreciative with his time in Tampa Bay. Did find out, by the way, that he had his shoulder injury was it was a tendon issue. It was a tendon issue. Then he's been rehabbing for the last 3 weeks, and it's back to normal. So, but if you missed that, that's on the Alouettes YouTube page. Thoughts, though. I mean, it's not an about time statement. It's not a thank God he's back statement. I think he may be, and we were talking about this last year, obviously, with Darnell Sankey as an example. He may be that piece of the puzzle that we needed to complete this defense with this run leading up to the Grey Cup playoffs.
Yeah, it really did come down to, it was more a matter of when, not if, Luala Ugalak was going to come back to the Montreal Alouettes. And as it turned out, he did have the shoulder issue, which ultimately led to him being let go by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I figured it was just going to be a matter of time until he gets it worked out and gets back to being 100% or close to 100%, enough that, for him to be able to take the field and do what he does best. And I guess that time is now. And truthfully, couldn't have come at a better time. Just like the Austin Mack signing. I mean, yes, this team has a wealth of wide receivers, which now they seem not to have anymore because guys are going on the 6-game list still, but other guys are coming off. But anyways, for Luala Ugalak to come back, though, is definitely appreciated and definitely needed, because I feel like this defensive line, which, as I've talked about numerous times, Danny Machocha just can't leave well enough alone with it. Always finding a way to improve it. As he said, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And I guess that was kind of the concern, is there hasn't really been much of a pass rush per se. And Lawal Ugalak changes that. Not only that, he's a ratio breaker. That's going to be massive as well when it comes to this defensive line. But the idea of Lawal, Mustafa Johnson, Isaac Adeyemi Berglund, Derek Wigan, Dylan Wynn, all those guys slotting in and out of the lineup. Holy cow. That's got to help. Because, I mean, Berglund's been doing a fantastic job as far as I'm concerned. Wigan is no slouch. Dylan Wynn has been good, but there's times too where I feel like he's not really giving 100%. And maybe it's just, is he getting double teamed a little too often? And maybe that's why he's not able to do exactly what he can do. It's hard to say. Mustafa Johnson, of course, is just absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, but you're still not getting, I still feel like that front seven of the defense has the same teeth as it did last year. And it's kind of funny to say that because they didn't have Lawal Ugalak to start the season. Yeah, Sean Lemon was there, but he's gone now. And even when he was there, it was still a simple matter of, like, he's not a young man anymore. So I mean, like, this, you want the youth to shine. You want the young, hungry Lions to get in there and do their thing. With Lawal Ugalak coming back, though, that changes everything. I mean, we saw how we played, like, towards the end of last season and even into the playoffs. Guy was an absolute beast. Like, just big, meaty paws, just slapping balls out of the air. I mean, this guy is just absolutely dangerous. And if he's back, and I'm sincerely hoping that if they signed him, that he's got to be, if not at 100%, very close to 100%. Alouettes fans should be very excited to have this guy back in the lineup. I mean, he's going to make a major difference. And being a national player as well, I mean, that just strengthens the roster. That strengthens the ratio as well. Maybe a little more moving around of parts may have to happen as a result. But listen, that's a good problem to have as far as I'm concerned. I mean, to see Lawal Ugalak back in the Alouettes lineup, I've said this before and I'll say it again, couldn't have come at a better time than now.
And even with the coyness of Coach Moss, which we've learned to live with, learn to grow and love, I guess. We'll find out with the once the depth chart is released on Friday if Lawal will be playing. I think it's higher than 50-50. I think you also think it's higher than 50-50 that he will be playing. So,
I mean, put it this way, I'll be very, very surprised. I mean, if they've gone to the length of signing him, it's not about learning the playbook necessarily. I mean, especially on the defensive line, right? I mean, it's just go attack the quarterback. Like that. There's your playbook. I think. I think that's hit the wall. Go after that guy that's throwing the ball. I mean, that's not hard. I mean, I think once he gets back, amongst his brothers and getting into the fight and all that stuff, then I think he'll be just fine. I'd be very, very surprised if we don't see him at TD Place this Saturday.
Yeah, after 1 week, it looks like Marc-Antoine Dequoy seems to be over his concussion symptoms. He has been he was limited on Tuesday. Today he was full practice. I'm guessing based off the transaction wire too that it looks like it's possible that he'll be back. Philippe Lemay-Cardinal was transferred to the practice roster. Theo Grant was transferred to the practice roster. The Alouettes did release some people. Anthony Frederico was released. Titus Hall was moved to the practice roster. And this is one I wanted to ask you about specifically, Cliff. Bryce Notree was released.
Yeah. A little surprised because, yes, he was a part of that Grey Cup winning team last season. When they brought him back, like, he was a late training camp cut. A couple injuries happened. They brought him back. Didn't really see very much of the field, to tell you the truth. Been on the practice roster now for past couple of weeks, and now released. And to me, that makes me think that once again, maybe someone else is going to be taking off the 6-game list. But kind of unfortunate for Bryce to not really get a true opportunity. I feel. I mean, I know spots are limited, and I know opportunities are even more limited. But and I guess for whatever reason, he wasn't able to do what he was able to do. But you know, once again, that's the unfortunate nature of football as it sits. Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. I couldn't help but laugh with Federico. He was released by the Alouettes and almost immediately snapped up by the Calgary Stampeders. Like,
No kidding.
to the point where I have to wonder, like, did he even get on the plane to go back to Montreal? Like, did they just say, you know what? Why don't you just leave your stuff here? Well, just stay in Calgary. And like with how quickly all that happened, like it makes me wonder. But yeah, I mean, good on him. I mean, at least you're not out of work for long. But
Yeah.
it was just it really was surprising just how quickly, like, I almost felt like just as quickly as the Alouettes announced that he was being let go, that Calgary basically picked him up almost immediately. Like I would say within hours. Even it was crazy just how quickly that happened, and no less after just playing this team too. Like that's the
No kidding.
really incredible thing.
No kidding. Get to the game in a minute. Just one quick CFL tidbit. First and foremost, one real thing is that the CFL has now started the process for media accreditation for the playoffs and for Grey Cup. If you're media, you know what I'm talking about. Second of all, the big news, and just real quickly, because we want to talk about the game coming up this week. But real quickly, there's an announcement today. It was announced that Bell Media is now out of the sports business. They're no longer part of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. All their shares were purchased by Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
So now Rogers basically owns Raptors, Blue Jays, TFC Toronto, Argos. Am I leaving anything out? Rogers Center.
Yep. I guess that ties in with the Blue Jays. So
I guess the arena. What is the arena now called in Toronto?
Scotiabank.
Scotiabank. Yep.
Arena.
So, but and everyone remembers the Argos have a bell patch on their uniforms.
Right.
What's your thought on this? Because when I saw this, the first thing that I thought about that this is going to make, we'll see what happens. But this now with the television broadcast rights coming up again, are due and can be bidded on in 2026. I think this throws even more popcorn and oil into the mix because just of what's happened, unless MLSE sells the Argos, but
which in theory they could do.
But what are your thoughts? Because I really think that this is very interesting, especially when it comes to the television landscape, and obviously with what we talked about when it came to Pierre Carl Pelado and Videotron and TVA Spa and that whole group there potentially bidding for some of the rights, because people need to remember that RDS and TSN are owned by Bell. So, what were your thoughts when you first heard about this?
Definitely interesting, especially since history has shown that the Rogers association with the Canadian Football League and the Toronto Argos was not favorable. It was essentially Rogers that told the Argos to take a hike from the Sky Dome, which is now the Rogers Center. Doesn't seem to be a whole lot of love for the CFL in general from Rogers overall. And now they've basically gotten into bed with MLSE, who, again, are the owners of the Toronto Argonauts. How is that going to affect things? At least as far as the ownership aspect things go for the Argos, it's hard to say because, I mean, MLSE is such a huge banner that oversees essentially every professional sports team in Toronto.
I know.
I think it'll make things very interesting for sure. And yeah, I definitely think now with this news, it will make 2026 and the bidding wars, so to speak, for the rights to broadcasting CFL games a lot more interesting as well, because now all of a sudden Bell, who owns TSN and RDS, is competing against Rogers, who owns one of the football teams. Then you also have Pierre Carpeldo, who owns TVA, who owns Quebec Media, and also owns the Alouettes. And he's more than likely going to want to get into that action. Does that mean is he going to have to partner with Rogers to provide the English aspect of things? Whereas kind of like the current deal now with the NHL, where Rogers Sportsnet handles the English side of things, whereas TVA Sports holds the rights for the French broadcasts. Could a similar deal be reached as far as CFL games go, where maybe TVA Sports covers the Alouettes or pretty much broadcasts any or all of the games in French, and then Rogers broadcasts the game in English? I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but it's definitely going to make things very interesting, especially in light of the CFL and CTV now becoming a thing again.
Yeah.
I mean, the landscape is going to be opening up big time over the next couple of years, and it's definitely going to make for some very interesting negotiations. And when all the dust is settled, I mean, we could be looking at completely different broadcasting league wide. And if it leads to a better product, I'm all for it. But you know it's going to make things very, very interesting, speculation wise, from now until 2026.
Yeah, and even too, people need to remember that Rogers does partner with the CBC for some of the NHL coverage. Mm-hmm. So maybe they could do the exact same thing if they won the bidding war, and for English and French too, maybe, and decided to go ahead and put some of the games back on CBC.
Or do you go the streaming route? Do you maybe start thinking about partnering up with like Amazon Prime or Netflix or something like that, based on how the NFL is basically doing exclusive streaming games, for example, like on the Peacock network, like Peacock streaming and Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Could we maybe see the CFL go that route for one or more games? Also a possibility.
The plus two, I think, if anybody knows much about the CBC does have their own streaming. They have CBC Gem, and they have a lot of stuff that they put on CBC Gem, including the CEBL games, even though I think most of them now are on TSN. Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff, is on Gem. So, and that's free streaming versus currently what TSN offers. So,
I mean, as you said, there's a lot of potential moving pieces here. And it's just going to make the discussion all that much more interesting, and maybe even a little heated at times between now and 2026, when the rights for the broadcast will be up for bids.
Yep, exactly. So you're talking about the CFL and CTV. That's exactly where the Alouettes game is going to be broadcast this week. When the Alouettes go into a TD Place to play a team that is currently unbeaten at home. They go in also as being unbeaten on the road. Alouettes go into this game as a 2.5 point favorite. Was it 2.5 point favorite? Mm-hmm. It was a 2.5 point favorite over under a 49.5. This is an Alouettes team, Cliff. If people don't remember this little tidbit that I gave last year. The Alouettes have beaten, and this is the current team record. They have beaten Ottawa in Ottawa 9 straight times. So they have a lot behind them, obviously, and there are a lot of different playoff scenarios within this game too, because if Toronto does lose, Montreal wins, they clinch a home playoff game, which obviously we know is big. But from there, it's, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Clip, it's been a long time since the Red Blacks and Alouettes actually meant something other than the games that obviously, which are really hyped up and are well worth the do on Thanksgiving. But these next 2 games for the Alouettes versus the Red Blacks could easily decide the Eastern Division.
Essentially, it can. Let's not forget this is the first time in a long time, let's just leave it at that, that both the Alouettes and the Red Blacks are on the positive side of things, like record-wise and just with how they've approached things this year. I mean, both teams, I won't say they're equal necessarily, because obviously Montreal has the better record, but I mean, Ottawa has really put themselves together and really they find ways to win. I liken them a lot to last year's Alouettes team in that some of those games they probably had no business winning, but they did. They just found ways to win. And I always say winners find a way to win. And that's exactly what Ottawa's been doing, more often than not this season. And it's funny because I looked at them earlier this year and I thought, I mean, I don't see it. I don't see how this can be a good team, but they keep winning, or they just kept finding ways to win. It wasn't pretty by any stretch, but I mean, last couple of years in Montreal too, like a lot of their wins were not pretty either, but they get the W, and that's what counts. I don't think Montreal is taking this Red Blacks team lightly, and they shouldn't, considering how massive the implications are for not only this game coming up, but the game on Thanksgiving Monday. I mean, as you said, that could truly make the Eastern Division. By the time Thanksgiving rolls around, a lot could be settled, or you still could have a lot on the line. A lot's going to depend on starting this Saturday where things go. But Montreal can go and maintain their reputation of winning in the nation's capital. I mean, that will secure them a home playoff game, whether it's the Eastern semifinal or hopefully the Eastern final. Ottawa, though, they want to get back to the playoffs. They haven't been to the playoffs since 2018 when they went to the Grey Cup and lost, but they still made it. Since then, they haven't even come close to a playoff game. This is their opportunity to get that X next to their name, and you know that they're going to be fighting for it. You know that they're going to be doing everything they can to show that they're just as good, if not better, than the Montreal Alouettes, despite the record, despite everything that's been going on. And both these teams are going through injury woes. Both these teams are still, it almost feels like they're still kind of finding their way just a little bit. But something's going to come to a head on Saturday. Either the team that's unbeaten at home is going to finally taste defeat, or the Montreal Alouettes are finally going to get that road loss. We thought it was going to happen last week, but they scratched and clawed their way back to be able to tie the game. So they still remain unbeaten away from Percival Molson Stadium. Is that trend going to continue? Only way we're going to find out is this Saturday, because it's definitely going to be a tightly contested affair. I definitely think it's going to be a game. Both teams are going to want it bad enough. And as a result, I think we're going to see a very, very spirited affair on Saturday.
This is the game, obviously, after we've seen what's happened with the Alouettes. This is a game where they can't start slow. No. That's been their Achilles heel for the past couple of weeks, that they've started slow.
Yeah, this rope-a-dope thing that they seem to do, where they just have a terrible first half, get it figured out, make the adjustments in the second half, and then come out like gangbusters. You can't do that. You got to just walk in there and punch them in the face right away. And look what Hamilton did last week against Ottawa. That's more or less, they set the tone right away. And Ottawa was constantly trying to play catch up to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who, again, have not been a very good team, but all of a sudden, over the past couple of weeks, they seem to have sprung to life. They're still mathematically in the playoff picture. I mean, is it too little, too late? It's hard to say, but I mean, that's the thing about the CFL is you just never know what's going to happen. It's not over until it's over, essentially. I mean, teams that we thought that were going to be left for dead, all of a sudden look like playoff contenders. And simply put, Montreal cannot play down to their opponent's level anymore. They can't do this, as I said, rope-a-dope thing where they're trying to figure out the other team. There's nothing to figure out at this point. I mean, you know who this Ottawa Red Blacks team is. You know what their strengths, their weaknesses are at this point. There's more than enough film on Drew Brown and the rest of this team. You know what you have to do. I mean, I think, if anything, Hamilton gave a picture-perfect, explanation of how to defeat the Ottawa Red Blacks. I mean, if Montreal were to follow Hamilton's lead as far as, how to take them apart, and essentially that's what they did. They set the tone early against Ottawa and didn't let go. Montreal would be well advised to do the exact same thing. Like, just walk in first series, even on offense, go down and score a touchdown. Let the defense do what they do best. Get in Drew Brown's kitchen, make the lives miserable. Stop the Dominique Rimeses, the Nick Mardners, and those guys, and just go to town. Go to absolute town on these guys. I mean, you got two great field goal kickers in this game as well, and it could very well come down to those guys who's going to blink first. that could be the difference in this game as well. But I think if Montreal comes in and sets the tone right away and really truly dominates from the get-go, none of this playing catch-up nonsense, which also too they were a little bit guilty of the last time they played the Red Blacks in Ottawa. You remember that game?
Caleb
that was
Evans.
that was a nail biter and way too close for comfort. But Montreal simply can't do that again.
And you're saying before too, with if Ottawa does win, they get that X. So there are a lot of there's a lot of implications for this game, and we found out today, by the way, that a big loss obviously for the Red Blacks was Darius Pickett's gone for the year.
Yeah, former Montreal Alouette, former Toronto Argonaut, and now current Ottawa Red Black. Another guy too, like one of those team guys, like one of those guys that will pick guys up by their straps and get them to work. Like definitely the kind of guy you want to have on your team. And make no mistake, that's a huge loss for the Red Blacks there. So Montreal's got to be breathing a little sigh of relief. They're not going to see their old friend Darius, but there's still a lot of weapons on this Ottawa team that you got to be cautious of. So hopefully, I don't want to say get off the schneid necessarily when it comes to the Alouettes. I mean, yeah, they're winless in their last two. It's not a losing streak technically, but you got to get back in the. You got to start getting W's again. You really got to start setting the tone, like really prove that this isn't a fluke. I think this Alouettes team, by and large, has proven that they are who they say they are. It's just the past couple of weeks has just been like they've been taking their eyes off the prize a little bit, and it's got to stop.
They've been less than mid.
I hate to say it, but it's true. And the nice thing is, all it takes is just one game, one win to reset yourself, to get back on track and remind yourself of who you are. And let's not forget, the rest of the schedule is not going to be, there's no gimmies here. I mean,
no.
You got to go to next week. You got to go to Toronto and play at BMO Field, which again, you won earlier this year at BMO Field, but it's still a tough place to play. You got to fly out to Vancouver and play the BC Lions. I'm sure a lot of people have already considered that a loss. I mean, and then
Winnipeg in the home finale.
Yeah, and again, Winnipeg too. They're not Winnipeg anymore. Like they're getting wins. They got their act together, and all of a sudden, that was one of those teams that was initially written off, but they're back on track as well and looking dangerous again. So that will not be a gimme win by any stretch either. Even if the game is being played at Percival Molson Stadium. I mean, this Alouettes team has got their work cut out for them. I think they can win majority of those games, if not all of them, but they got to want it. And I sincerely hope that the past 2 weeks have been a bit of a humbling experience for them. And maybe they had to go through that to realize, hey, we're better than this. We're clearly not playing to potential, and that's got to stop. And if they can just starting this Saturday against Ottawa, get themselves back on track, get back into that championship mindset, get back into that beast of the East or even beast of the CFL mindset. If they could do that, that's going to be massive. And guess what? If they come out of Ottawa with the win, then yes, folks, you will be seeing a playoff game at Percival Molson Stadium in November.
Game again, it is not on TSN. It is on CFL on CTV starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. Last time I heard, I think it was 5 trucks, 5 buses are coming from. This is the yearly fan bus. Fan bus game. I think there's 5 different buses coming, which is crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, Alouettes Nation for the most part does show up pretty well in Ottawa, but you're really going to see them show up with that. And I believe there's over 20,000 seats sold for this game already, with still a couple days to go. So I mean, it's going to be pretty close to a packed house, and you pack that house also with Alouettes fans. I mean, it's going to make for a very fun atmosphere. It's
been a while. I don't remember the last time I was at when it was close to capacity. But speaking of, we will be there. Alouettes Flightdeck crew will be there for the game, and you will be. And obviously, when it comes to Flightdeck Live, you're on the road, Tim. What are you going to do? Well, stay tuned. You will be seeing us live for Flightdeck Live on location. So stay tuned for all of our socials for all that information. But you will be seeing us again, whether it be on the field or whether it be in the concourse. But you will be seeing us for our post-game show as regularly scheduled.
Absolutely. So once again, folks, make sure you like, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're following, whatever it is, however you're taking part of this podcast, make sure you're on board with us. We want you on board with us, whether we're in Ottawa, back home at Personal Wilson Stadium, or anywhere else in the Canadian Football League. If we happen to be there, we want you there with us. So make sure you hit the notification bell, or whatever it takes to get notified when we go live. Because yes, Saturday afternoon after the Ottawa Red Blacks Montreal Alouettes game, Flightdeck Live will be happening live at TD Place. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you tune in.
Perfect. Hey, that's the perfect way to end the show. We appreciate everybody who joins us every week. And if you happen to be coming to the game, make sure you DM us and come say hi. We'll be more than happy to say hey to you, whether it be pre-game, during the game, or post-game. So we really appreciate it. So
we'll be using the spot. We'll be the guys wearing the Flightdeck gear stuff.
Yeah, so cartoon bird 56 shirt, or something like that. But I completely agree with you. So we will be seeing you either from Flightdeck Live or for the show next week. But for everybody here at the Alouettes Flightdeck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.